You've got the job, the apartment, maybe even the respect. But at 2 a.m., when the noise fades and the crowd's gone, you're left with one question you can't outrun. If I stop performing, will there be anything left of me at all? That silence you avoid? It's the only thing honest enough to answer. Part 1. The mirror of silence, what you see when there's nowhere left to run. Have you ever stepped into a cabin deep in the wood zone without Wi-Fi? No cell service? No television humming in the background? The kind of place where even the wind seems to whisper secrets. A buddy of mine, Daniel, once challenged himself to do just that. He took a weekend off from everything, no phone, no podcasts, no people, just him and the quiet. He thought it would be peaceful. Maybe he'd catch up on sleep, drink some coffee by the window, journal a little. But by the first night, something unexpected happened. The quiet started to close in. Not physically, but emotionally. The stillness wasn't soothing. It was loud. Louder than traffic. Louder than his office. Louder than arguments even. Because when all the external noise disappeared, the internal noise showed up. Memories, regrets, old conversations where he bit his tongue, opportunities he never chased, people he missed but never reached out to, and worst of all, questions. Why do I need so much noise to feel normal? Why do I feel anxious when there's nothing wrong? That's the mirror silence holds up. It doesn't show your reflection, it shows your raw, unfiltered self. The version of you not curated for anyone else. And most men, if we're being honest, have no idea how to sit with that guy. Daniel told me later, I thought I needed a break from the world. Turns out, I needed to stop running from myself. That hit me. Because how many of us say we want peace but panic the moment peace actually shows up? We chase distraction like it's oxygen. New apps, new flings, new goals. And society praises it, calls it ambition, drive, hustle. But sometimes, movement is just avoidance with better branding. Here's the truth nobody puts on a t-shirt. Stillness is a test. It reveals what you've buried, the dreams you let die quietly, the anger you never admitted, the promises you broke to yourself when no one was watching. And in that stillness, there's a fork in the road. You can reach for your phone, your calendar, your next fix of noise. Or you can stay, just breathe, and feel it. The silence will feel heavy at first, like a weight pressing on your chest. You'll want to label it as loneliness or anxiety, but really it's truth. And it's been waiting for you. If you sit long enough, something strange happens. You begin to separate who you are from what you fear. You're not the guy who failed that time. You're not the one she left behind. You're not your old stories. You're just you, awake, present, aware. And in that awareness, something begins to grow. Not louder, not flashier, just real. Your decisions carry weight. Your words become fewer but more honest. Your presence begins to anchor the room, not because you're seeking attention, but because you no longer need it. That's the paradox. The man who stops chasing noise becomes the one others quietly respect. Not because he performed, but because he endured. So if your life feels strangely quiet lately, don't reach for the volume knob. Maybe it's not a breakdown. Maybe it's an invitation to pause, to face the version of yourself you've been too busy to meet, to finally look into the mirror of silence and say, I'm not afraid of you anymore. Because that man's not running. He's rising. Part 2. The approval trap, why needing to be liked is silently destroying you. I once watched a street performer in Venice who could control a marionette so well, people swore it had a soul. The puppet danced, bowed, mimicked laughter. The crowd clapped, coins clinked in the basket, and everyone moved on smiling. But as the square emptied, I noticed something. The puppeteer was sweating, his hands were blistered, and the smile on his face, gone. That's the image I can't forget, because I've seen that man in real life, over and over again. Sometimes he wears a suit. Sometimes he's a husband, a friend, a leader. But underneath he's just another guy pulling strings all day, hoping someone will clap. That's the trap, the approval trap. It doesn't feel like poison at first. In fact, it feels warm like attention, like belonging, like love. You crack a joke, they laugh. You wear what they like, they compliment. You bite your tongue. They say, "You're so easygoing." And somewhere in that cycle, something dangerous happens. You begin to believe that being liked equals being worthy. That applause is proof of value. That your silence makes things easier, so maybe quiet equals good. But here's what no one tells you. The more strings you pull to be accepted, the more tangled you become inside. And the worst part? No one sees the damage. Because on the outside, you're performing well. You show up, smile, say the right thing, avoid conflict, and slowly, you start forgetting what your real voice even sounds like. I knew a man, Jason. Everyone liked him. He hosted dinners, remembered birthdays, helped people move. He was the guy you could count on, until he couldn't get out of bed anymore. When I visited him, he said, "I don't know who I am if I'm not useful to someone." That hit me harder than any book ever could. That's the cost of needing to be liked. You don't just lose your time, you lose yourself. You smile at things that hurt you. You say yes to things that drain you. You stay silent in rooms where your soul is screaming. All because rejection feels like death. But what if it's not? What if being disliked isn't the worst thing that can happen? What if being liked for who you're not is far worse? That's when the shift begins. You stop pulling the strings. You let the puppet sit still. You start saying things not for applause, but because they're true. At first, people will be confused. Some will be disappointed. They liked the performer. They didn't expect the man. But the ones who stay, they see you. Not the version of you that performs, but the version that breathes. And more importantly, you begin to see you too. You realize you can go a whole day without seeking approval and still feel full. You can say no, and the world won't collapse. You can walk away from a room where you're not heard and still be whole. Because here's the paradox. You only become truly respected when you no longer need to be. And the moment you stop begging to be liked is the moment you start living as if you matter, not to the crowd, but to yourself. So if you feel exhausted like your soul's on stage every day pulling strings, maybe it's time to stop dancing. Maybe it's time to step off the stage and remember who you were before the audience arrived. Part 3. Clarity in the quiet: how solitude reveals who you really are. Imagine this. You're in a small boat in the middle of a massive lake. No oars, no engine, no one else in sight, just water in every direction, blue stretching into blue, and the only sound is your own breathing, maybe the occasional lap of water against the hull. At first, it's stunning, almost peaceful. But then, something shifts. You realize you have no sense of direction. No map, no cell signal, no voices. Just you and space. That's what solitude really feels like. Not like a retreat into calm, but a slow, silent unraveling of everything you thought you were. See, we've been told that being alone is about self-care, candles, and calm playlists. But true solitude? It's the wilderness. Not because it's violent, but because it's honest. There are no mirrors out here, no feedback, no applause. And when no one's watching, your decisions change. Who are you when no one's telling you who to be? What do you choose when there's no one to impress? What direction do you paddle in when you finally have to decide for yourself? This is the part most people avoid, because we think we want clarity, but what we really want is confirmation. We want someone to nod and say, "Yes, you're doing great. Yes, you're on track. Yes, that version of you makes sense." But solitude doesn't offer that. It strips you down, not to break you, but to show you who's underneath the noise. And that's when the real clarity starts to form. Not like a spotlight, more like your eyes adjusting to darkness. Shapes begin to form. Truth begins to surface. You realize how much of your life was about reaction. Reacting to expectations. Reacting to validation. Reacting to fear of being misunderstood. Now you're choosing based on something else. What aligns, what strengthens, what matters. There's a man I met during a wilderness trip in Montana Logan. He'd left a high-paying tech job in San Francisco to live off-grid for a while. He told me, "I wasn't burned out from work. I was burned out from not making a single decision that felt like mine in 5 years." That hit hard, because how many men are successful on paper, but directionless inside? How many men are surrounded by people, but isolated from themselves? Solitude doesn't always give you answers, but it gives you enough silence to hear the real questions. Am I living by conviction or convenience? Do I stand for something or just go along? If all the titles were stripped away, who would be left? These are not questions for dinner parties. They're questions you ask at 2 a.m. or out on that metaphorical lake, when it's just you, your life, and a horizon you haven't named yet. And once you face them, you don't return the same. You start choosing differently. Not out of rebellion, but out of alignment. Not because you want to shock people, but because you finally stopped lying to yourself. You move with clarity because solitude didn't give you a script. It gave you space to write your own. And that's how you know. The man who comes back from the quiet, he's no longer drifting. He's steering. So maybe now, the silence doesn't feel so threatening. Maybe it's not a void to escape, but a space to return to. Not loneliness, but clarity. Not punishment, but preparation. Because the man who chooses silence doesn't disappear. He becomes sharper, more rooted, less distracted by noise, and more aligned with purpose. He stops explaining, stops performing, stops proving. And in that stillness, he becomes undeniable. Welcome to your final reflections and your 7-day awareness challenge. Let's begin. Stillness isn't a destination. It's a decision. A decision to stop outsourcing your worth, to stop needing permission, to stop drowning in the noise and finally hear your own voice. Most men drift for years, chasing recognition, applause, belonging, but few stop long enough to ask, Is the life I'm building even mine? This week, you do something different. You choose awareness over avoidance. You take back the space you've been renting to distraction. So here's your challenge. Underscore 7-day awareness challenge. Day 1, turn off the noise. Spend 1 hour today with no phone, no music, no podcasts, just you and your thoughts. Notice what comes up without judgment. Just observe. Day 2, say no without explaining. Politely decline one request today without over-explaining. Your no is enough. Day 3, reclaim a routine. Choose one daily habit you do automatically, like checking your phone, and pause before you do it. Ask yourself, is this serving me? Day 4, sit in stillness. Find 15 minutes today to sit in silence. No scrolling, no journaling, no doing. Just sit. Let the discomfort speak. Day 5, speak a truth you've been avoiding. Tell someone something, honest, gently, but directly. It can be as simple as, I've outgrown this. Let your voice practice being real. Day 6, reflect in writing. Answer this on paper. What version of me am I still performing for? Don't filter. Write like no one will read it. Day 7, move with intention. Spend today doing less but with purpose. Speak slower. Walk slower. Decide slower. Let your energy say, I know who I am. At the end of the week, you may not have all the answers, but you'll be much closer to hearing the right questions. Because the man who practices awareness becomes harder to manipulate, harder to impress, and far, far harder to shake. So here's the line in the sand. You don't need more noise. You need more stillness. You need more you. Before you go, if this message struck something deep in you, don't scroll away in silence. Drop a comment. What's one thing you're ready to stop chasing? Hit like if you're done performing. Subscribe if you're ready to live from the inside out. Here at Petals of Stoicism, we don't chase approval. We build men quietly, intentionally, powerfully.